I'm 82 years old, and I need to tell you something that might destroy everything you believe about retirement. For 45 years, I told myself the deadliest lie in modern society. When I retire, I'll finally start living. My name is Harold, and I nearly killed myself at 68. Not with a gun or pills. I did it slowly by believing that who I was and what I did for work were the same thing. 15 years ago, I retired after 45 years at the same company. I thought I was stepping into freedom. Instead, I stepped off a cliff into the darkest hole I'd ever experienced. Within 8 months, I couldn't get out of bed. Within a year, I was planning my own death. Here's what nobody tells you about retirement. If you don't know who you are without your job, retirement doesn't set you free, it erases you. I started at Morrison Sales when I was 29. 45 years later, I was still there. Not because I couldn't leave, but because leaving would mean losing the only version of myself I knew how to be. Somewhere in those first few years, I made a trade that millions make without realizing it. I traded being Harold for being Harold for Morrison Sales. The deal seemed fair because Harold for Morrison Sales felt so much better than just Harold. Harold for Morrison Sales was important. He had an office with his name on the door. He had quarterly targets that mattered, meetings where people listened, achievements that got celebrated. Just Harold. I couldn't even remember who that guy was supposed to be. By 40, I was working 60-hour weeks and calling it dedication. By 50, I was checking emails on Christmas morning and calling it responsibility. By 60, I hadn't taken a real vacation in 15 years. When people asked what I did, I'd light up. I'm regional sales manager at Morrison, been there 35 years. Their eyes would show respect. That felt like love. But when Dorothy would ask me what I wanted, what made me happy, what my dreams were, I'd get annoyed. Serious men didn't have dreams, they had careers. What I never realized was that I hadn't been building a career. I'd been building a very expensive, very elaborate prison, and I was both the prisoner and the guard. And the guard, the saddest part, I was so proud of that prison. I polished the bars every day and called it achievement. December 18th, 2009, last day of work. They cleared out my desk while I was at my goodbye lunch. 45 years of being important, and by 3 p.m., it was like Harold Peterson had never existed. Monday morning, December 21st, I woke up at 6:30 like I had for 4.5 decades, showered, put on a dress shirt out of habit, then stood in my closet realizing I had nowhere to go. The silence in that house was deafening. Not peaceful silence, empty silence. The kind of quiet that screams at you that you don't matter anymore. By 10 a.m., I'd run out of things to do. The day stretched ahead of me like a prison sentence. Week 2 was worse. I started calling former colleagues just to hear their voices, but their voices were distracted, hurried. They had real life to live. I wasn't part of real life anymore. I was just an old man with nothing but time and no idea what to do with it. By month 3, I stopped shaving regularly. Dorothy would come home and find me sitting in the same chair she'd left me in, still in my pajamas. "How was your day?" she'd ask. "Fine," I'd lie. But my day had been 8 hours of existing without purpose, breathing without meaning, taking up space without justification. The worst moment came in month 6. I was in the cereal aisle at 10:30 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I realized everyone around me had somewhere they needed to be. I was the only person there with absolutely nowhere to go and all day to get there. I was the only person whose presence or absence made no difference to anyone. That's when I understood what had really happened. I hadn't retired from Morrison Sales. Morrison Sales had divorced me. By month 8, I wasn't getting dressed anymore. Not because I was lazy, because getting dressed implied I had a purpose, and I didn't. I'd sit in my recliner from 7 a.m. until Dorothy came home at 5 p.m., 8 hours of taking up oxygen that someone more useful could be breathing. Sleep became my only escape from the crushing weight of uselessness. I'd nap for 3 hours every afternoon, then go to bed at 8 p.m. 12 hours of unconsciousness felt like mercy. The suicidal thoughts started around month 10. Not dramatic thoughts, practical ones. I'm 68 years old. I serve no function. What am I even here for? I started researching life insurance policies. How long before suicide was covered? 2 years? I could wait. At least then my death would serve a purpose. Dorothy would get the money. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in November. Dorothy had gone to work, and I was sitting in my chair, unwashed, unshaven, when the doorbell rang. It was my neighbor's 8-year-old grandson, Tommy, selling candy bars for his school fundraiser. This bright-eyed little boy, full of energy and purpose, asking if I wanted to buy chocolate to help his class. And I stood there, this pathetic old man in wrinkled pajamas, and realized that this 8-year-old child had more purpose in his life than I did. After Tommy left, I looked at myself in the hallway mirror, really looked. I saw a dead man who hadn't stopped breathing yet. That night I told Dorothy, I don't want to be here anymore. She knew what I meant. Dr. Martinez was the third therapist we tried. She took one look at me and said, Harold, you're not adjusting to retirement. You're grieving a death, the death of the only version of yourself you knew how to be. That was the first time anyone had named what was happening. I wasn't sad about not working. I was mourning Harold Peterson, who had died the day Morrison Sales cleaned out his desk. Dr. Martinez asked me a question that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. Harold, if someone asked your wife to describe who you are, not what you did for work, but who you are as a person, what would she say? I sat there for 10 minutes and couldn't come up with an answer. After 42 years of marriage, Dorothy could describe my work personality perfectly, but she couldn't describe me because there was no me to describe. Harold, you didn't retire from a job. You committed identity suicide. For 45 years, you systematically killed every part of yourself that wasn't useful to Morrison Sales. You murdered your curiosity, your passions, your sense of play. You turned yourself into a work machine so efficient that when the work stopped, there was nothing left. She was right. I tried to remember the last time I'd laughed at something that wasn't work related. I couldn't. The last time I'd felt excited about something that didn't involve achievement? Nothing. I had spent 45 years optimizing myself for productivity and strangled my soul in the process. But here's what haunts me. It wasn't just retirement that was empty. My whole life had been empty. I'd just been too busy to notice. Work had been my drug, my escape from the responsibility of being a human being. As long as I could point to my job and say, that's who I am, I never had to figure out who I actually was. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that retirement hadn't broken me. It had just revealed that I was already broken. I was a 67-year-old man who had never learned to exist without external validation. The most devastating realization: I had wasted my entire adult life. While I was climbing ladders and hitting targets, life was happening all around me, and I was too busy being important to notice. But Dr. Martinez also told me something that saved my life. Harold, you're 68 years old. You might have 15 or 20 good years left. You can spend them mourning the person you never let yourself become, or you can spend them finally becoming that person. I'm 82 now. It took me 4 years to build a person worth being. And you know what I learned? The person I became, curious, present, genuinely happy, was inside me the whole time. I had just buried him under 45 years of work obsession. But here's what keeps me awake. How many people are making the same mistake? How many are building elaborate, successful lives around the absolute emptiness of their souls? If you define yourself by what you do instead of who you are, retirement will destroy you. Not because retirement is bad, but because there will be nothing left of you to retire. If your answer to who are you starts with "I'm a" and ends with a job title, you're not building a career. You're building a very expensive way to avoid becoming a human being. I see it everywhere. People who can't take vacations because they don't know who they are without work. People who check emails on Christmas because silence forces them to confront the emptiness inside. People who work 70-hour weeks and call it dedication when it's really elaborate suicide. You think you're building success, but you're systematically murdering every part of yourself that doesn't produce value for someone else. And the cruelest part, the companies you're killing yourself for will replace you within a week. I spent 45 years thinking I was indispensable. They had my replacement trained within a month. Your job will end, either through retirement, layoffs, illness, or death. And when it does, what will be left? What part of you exists independent of what you produce? Start now. While you're still working, start building a version of yourself that has nothing to do with achievement. Develop interests that don't advance your career. Learn to enjoy things that serve no purpose except joy. Because I promise you this, the day will come when work stops, and on that day you want to discover that there's still a person there worth knowing. Don't be 67 years old sitting in the therapist's office, unable to describe who you are without your job title. Don't waste 45 years building a beautiful, successful, completely hollow life. The clock is ticking, not toward retirement, but toward the day when you'll finally be forced to meet yourself without the job uniform on. Make sure when that day comes, there's someone there worth meeting, because if there isn't, I can tell you from experience, you'll want to die. And the tragedy is, in all the ways that matter, you already will have. I'm 82 years old. I finally know who Harold is. I just wish I hadn't waited until I was almost dead to meet him. Don't wait. The life you're postponing until retirement might be the only one you ever get. What are you going to do about it? Today, not someday. Today,